Hey guys, how's it going? MikeTheTech here, and we are on our fourth video of the top-down shooter tutorial series for GameMaker Studio 2. And in our last video, we created the bullet object. We set up a way to shoot the bullet, and we set up a cooldown so you can control how often the bullet shoots as you're holding down the fire button, which in our case is space. So in this video, I would like to set up power-ups so that we can change to different weapons when we pick up different items, or even change any type of resource when we pick up different items. So we'll go ahead and open up our game. I have it open here in GameMaker Studio 2. And the first thing we're going to want to do is open up our object player, I believe, go into create, and we'll set a variable. We'll assign a variable. Okay, and we can choose current weapon as our variable, and we can go down to our shooting event when we're holding down the space button, and we can add an if variable and say, this right above here, and we will put these to the right. That way, if laser cooldown is equal or lesser to 0, which means we can shoot, and current weapon is 0, which is the default that we have it set to, then we can shoot. So let's just make sure this works, because it's been finicky in the past for some reason. Perfect. So it checks to see if the laser is set to the current weapon, and if it is, it shoots. So that works so far. Now we need something to actually change the value. So let's go ahead and add a new sprite. We'll create, and let's call this SPR for sprite underscore powerup. Okay, so now we can import a powerup sprite. Again, I used kenny.nl assets in the Space Shooter Redux package, and we'll go to lasers, or not lasers, let's see, Powerups. Yeah, we can scroll down. So the thing I want to set up is shooting, is upgrading your laser to be a double laser. So I'm going to use this bronze badge, I guess it is, and have that actually signify the double laser power up. So I'll open that, and here it is. And let's just center, middle center the origin. That way, right when you hit the center, that's when you get it. All right, and we can set up a collision mask, but I don't think it has to be super accurate. But we can do. I mean, we could do a diamond, and that would be a little close, but it'll render slower. So we'll leave it as a rectangle. We can just forgive the player if he doesn't get all the way to the power up, and still give it to him. All right, him or her. So let's close this. Now we have our sprite power up, and we can create a new object, and we can call this object power up. And this is why we always stick to naming structures with the OBJ or SPR in the beginning to signify what kind of object it is. If it's an object, if it's a sprite, if it's a tile set, etc. Because sometimes we can end up with a lot of things named the same. Power up might have 8 different assets if you have an audio effect that the power up makes. So this just kind of helps. And then we'll choose sprite power up. Perfect. So now we can close this. And we can go into our room, and let's go ahead and actually drag a power-up into the room. Great. Alright, so the only thing our power-up should do when our player runs into it is it should destroy itself. So we'll add an event and say, if we collide with the player, then destroy an instance. And that's it. So if it collides with the player, it destroys itself. And that will get rid of the asset after we run into it. But we are not quite done yet, because we don't just want it to go away. We want it to actually increase the current weapon from 0 to 1 so we can enable some double lasers, right? So we'll create a collision event with the power-up from within the object player, and we will set a variable. And the variable we're going to set is current weapon, and we're going to assign value 1. So when you run into that, it changes it to 1, and hopefully it deletes itself. So let's go ahead and hit play. And this might not, it might bring up an error after we get the power up because we haven't assigned the second laser. I just think it's not going to shoot. I don't think it's going to bring up an error, but just in case it does, don't panic. All is good. We're just taking it step by step. Iterative design. So we are shooting, and then when I run into the power up, we can't shoot anymore, which means that it is no longer 0. That variable current weapon is probably no longer 0, and it's now 1, and I can't shoot anymore. And we also notice the power-up is gone because we set up the collision to destroy itself once it collides with the player. So that works so far. But now what do we do? When the current weapon is set to 1, we need it to actually reflect that in our weapons. So let's create another set of these. And here's a little trick we can hit. We can click here and then hold Control and actually highlight all 3 of these. We can right click and copy, and then we can right click and paste, and that will make a exact copy of those 3 drag and drop items. And that's just a way to save time. And then this one, we're going to say if it's equal to 1 instead of 0, we want to create a double laser, right? So we can actually copy this one too and paste it here. So we have 2 lasers spawning, which will already make a more powerful weapon because you're using 2. But we don't want them to necessarily be on top of each other and just make 2 in the same way. We want to move them left or to the right. So we'll make this one negative 20 pixels, and we'll make this one a positive 20 pixels, and we'll leave all this relative so that when it moves, it's relative to the player, not just to the screen and it jumps over to the left side of the screen or something. So yeah, it'll all do the same thing with the laser cooldown, and everything looks like it's set. So let's go ahead and hit play and see how this works. Hopefully I didn't forget anything. We might have to play with the X coordinate from negative 20, maybe more or less, to line it up with the ship's lasers, or turrets I should say. So we're shooting a single bullet. I run into this, and now we're shooting 2 bullets. And that's a pretty cool power-up. It's not quite where we want the bullets to show up yet, but it's very, very close. So let's go ahead and exit this, and let's just change this to a higher number, say 40, and hit play again. And hopefully this will be pretty close to where the actual ship's lasers are in the sprite. And this is why it's important to set that origin point in the player object, so that when you adjust weapons and things like that, and effects and particles, you know exactly where they're going to show up. So now that's pretty close actually. That looks pretty good. So we can leave it at that. We might play with it a little bit more and just line it up to the edges, maybe at 45 pixels or so, but it works pretty well. We now have our first power-up, and it doubles the power of our weapon system. It doubles the lasers. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and stay tuned for the next one. Have a good day. Peace.